Hello everybody, today in this video we talk about this amazing Swedish Apple commercial, all shot on iPhone. And in this video we talk about how you can achieve similar looks with your iPhone and what they did to make it even look more cinematic. If you ever shot something on an iPhone, there are many problems that you incur. One of them is, as you can see, you just have these three lenses to work with. I mean, it's better than in the early days where you have one phone camera, but now you have three. And the good thing about this, a variety of focal lengths gives you a little bit more control, how you can control and visualize the scene. On the iPhone 16, I think we have a 40mm wide angle and 77 telezoom, and the normal one should be something like 28mm. So you have a wide angle, a wide and a close lens, which is totally fine for most of the scenes that you are shooting. When you're shooting with an iPhone, before we go to break down the whole scenes, always clean your lenses. Your clean has to be really clean. Your clean has to be clean, exactly. Your lens have to be really clean to get these nice images. With a little bit of smudge that go easily on your phone, the image quality drops immensely. So when you're planning to shoot something on your iPhone with no attachments, always have some cleaning devices with you so that you can clean the lens. The lens have to be clean, if I wasn't clear enough. And the next thing you need is an ND. A lot of problems with iPhones is you can control your exposure. Without external apps like Filmic Pro, there are even no options to change your shutter speed, your aperture. I think you cannot change at all, your ISO. So when you're using iPhone, get a cheap ND filter. It's not a problem if they are $20, $30 and soften a little bit your image. Don't care. Your image will look in the end a lot better with an ND on your ends. There are some clip-ons that you just can put on your phone and screw a little filter on it. These things are the best for run and gun shooting. And exactly after you put on the ND, we fixed the exposure problem. The lens is clean. The next thing should be something like stabilization, but the internal stabilization of the iPhone is so good right now that you don't need a gimbal for most of the scenes. Next thing is shoot in log if you can. Log gives you the best dynamic range on a phone, so you have more variety to work with. The image from the iPhone is pretty neutral, but also the way they build it is to look very normal, very iPhone-like. So we have this scenario from a cowboy movie scene, and I personally hate when ads do that. That we see it's a movie set, because it's always, for me, it's like the filmmakers want to say, filmmaking is so cool, let's put it in the ad, it would be so cool for everyone. But it's only cool for the filmmakers. I think normal people doesn't really care. So it doesn't add much for me. Maybe it's for the joke in this commercial, but I have the feeling this is somehow a little bit cringe. But what are the things we are seeing here? Some thing to talk about is this bounce and these lights. So what are these lights? These are dyno lights. Dyno lights are very, very powerful. They're most of the time something like 12 kilowatt. What does it mean in English? You have to tell me. And they're most of the time tungsten, or they're all tungsten-like, so they give a warm color to the scene. But you can fix it with a frame with CTP, which converts this to 5500 Kelvin. But these lights are a really cheap option if you want to light on the day. They have a lot of output, but also they're really cheap to rental, so it's not like expensive like an M10 or an 80 kilowatt lamp. So if you consider lighting outside for your first time, these are the ones you have to consider. Sure, you need a high power voltage source for that, but like I said before, these ones are cheap, which gives him also a really warm backlight. But they're most there for the look that you have cool practicals. I personally even think they changed the sky and they wanted to make it look more dark. But as you can see, the sun is exactly there because we get this really long shadows. If you have the time and the money to shoot commercials like this, you always try to shoot on the best times of the day, which is early in the morning or early in the light, because the sun is lower, and we get a lot of contrast, long shadows, which just gives form and dynamic to the scene. Then the next thing we have to look is these ultrabounds, because we have patterns here. We have mirrors, but also flat, soft tiles. Today there's a lot more options for bounce sources. In early days we just had white and that's it, but now we have a lot of bounces that are half warm and half cold, or just blue with green patches on them. The reason therefore is that we want to make the bounce look more natural, because when you're in the forest, you most of the time the light that bounces around are leaves and the sky. So there's a lot of different ways now that you can achieve a little bit more realistic and better look with different colors bounces. These ones are mixed from mirrors and soft light. I think the usage for this, I never used this, is to make hard light, but also a little bit of variation, spots that are jumping everywhere, but also a little bit of creamy sources. So just a normal, regular object that would stand there. So here's the dialogue that we have, and the key light is coming from this side. But when you light something like this on the day, to get contrast, you have to put a big black flag above them. So you put a 20 by 20 and put it above the actors to drop the exposure on them. As you can see, it's always, you try to make layers as a cinematographer. So they are not as bright as the background, they bring them down. So you have this big topper, and also there would be a flag to get here a little bit of contrast. And this light could be a hot source that is pointing at her, because when you see in the eye, the source is not soft. So that means there's a pretty hard light far away that's just blasting on her and on him to get a little bit more fill ratio on them. Because when you put the negative fill on top of her and besides her, she's probably maybe a silhouette. On this shot we can see the bounce a little bit better and the patches from it, which looks like just mirrors, and the bright parts are just where the sun really hits. So forget what I said before. These are not mixed, but there are mixed ultra bounces that feature mirrors and also just matte finishes. As you can see, we still have the sun that comes from here. Gets a little bit of a warm edge on his face, which is probably from these dino nights. But there should be also a big negative fill on the side to give him a little bit of contrast. But the sun can also be so hard that he doesn't get a lot of fill. The fill that you're seeing on his face is probably the ground just bouncing back at him, because you can see the colors a little bit warm on his face. So that should be the ground that is reflecting him. And also what helps with the scene to get a little bit more atmosphere, you use haze. You can see in the background they just put a fog machine there that blasts on full power, always giving us a little bit atmosphere in the background. And a tip I have for you is, when you haze, don't haze in front of the character. When you have the space and not in a closed room, just haze in the background. Because what you do when you haze in the foreground is you wash out the whole image. But that is not what you want. You want to put a lot more atmosphere, that the image looks more full, and that's the reason why you put it in the background. So for your next shoot, even when you haze in a room at daytime, try to just haze the background. It fills the room a little bit, but it doesn't give you that washed out look when you're shooting a commercial. The joke of the commercial is that the director is chased by a bear, and that's the reason why the rest of the crew is hiding in this cage. And when we look here in the corner, we have a stabilization system for car rigs. And most of you probably know the tilter version of this, which is a really cheap one, which I recommend. It's only about $1,500 and really cheap to rent. You can most of the time get it for $100, $80, $60 a day. Depends on this rental house. But the tilter works with suction cups, so you don't have to build these pipes on your car and build a complicated rig. The tilter one, just like I said, the suction cups on the car. It gives you this extension arm which stabilizes the Z-axis, and there you can put Ronin Air 4, Air 3 or something like that, and there you can put your camera. So you have still the option to control with your app the tilt and pan of your camera and get this extra stabilization that your Ronin usually doesn't use. Yeah, and this is just the expensive version from this. Most of the time when you're doing car shots, you put pipes on your car, and so you can control more the height of the camera. When you put suction cups on your car, there's limits where you can put it, but with a pipe rig, you can basically put it everywhere. But when you have even more money, you would use a car with a crane on it. I think it's now the Ukraine crane. Yeah, with this you can also do these kinds of camera movements, which gives this extra depth. They just put the iPhone in there normally, but all of you already saw how these commercials are shot. On this iPhone is a converter with a big zoom lens, so you can control the image a little bit better. And also the stabilization, they give the camera a little bit more weight and everything. So this is just for the looks. Always remember, you have the problem with clients who tell, it has to be realistic, it has to be realistic. No, always tell them it just has to feel realistic. So you're selling a vision. A commercial is not anymore for directly selling you something. It's just to give an idea what you can do. It gives the audience an emotion. And this is what you are selling. The audience should think, I have this movie camera. I have this really clean setup. That's the reason why when you're shooting a product, you don't put a cable in it. There are a lot of people saying, it's annoying me. No, first of all, you're thinking about the product, and when you're working with something, you think about using it, having fun with it. This whole installation part, no one likes. So that's the reason why you keep this away and just giving the audience this clean feeling of, oh yeah, I want to use this product. This shot, we have the reveal of the beer, which is obviously CGI. And to make it a little bit more realistic, they put here again haze in the background, so the beer has something to interact with. This reduces his contrast. We can make it a little bit more soft. We focus on the cowboy, so the background is soft, which also helps the VFX because it doesn't have to be this detailed. And here's the same thing. Always concentrate on what you are exposing. You don't have to have perfect exposure on everything because it will reduce layers. They keep the decisions. They want the highlights not to be clipped. They want to focus on the beer. So they are dropping the exposure on the cowboy. They could done it again with black solid, negative fill that is above him, that is moving with the scene, or putting a flag on front of him to reduce the contrast and the exposure. And this is what makes the image look three-dimensional and more cinematic. Here's also a funny shot that did at the end. We are now looking at the perspective from the iPhone, which you can see the man being chased. That's not a complex effect to do. You put the phone on a tripod, you shoot the scene, and later in post, you make a round mask and put it into the lens. But it's also a great shot to tell the people, hey, this camera was recording the whole time. And you can also do it. If you enjoy this content, I really would appreciate a subscription from you. My name is Marco Bagnoli, and want to see more breakdowns, write it down in the comments, and we'll see you next time.